Alright guys, welcome back to the channel and to the garden. Today we're just going to be having a look at overwintering and care for your Ensete Maurelii or Ensete Ventricosum Maurelii. This is your red Abyssinian banana. As you can see, we've got our Musa Bastu bananas right here, and right there will be your red banana. Now, when it comes to overwintering, now this may be your perhaps first year plant. This one in particular is a third year plant. We'll go over the different types of methods to overwinter here. But with this one here, you can see we're coming to the back half of the year now, guys. It is kind of end of October now. It is starting to kind of get down to the cooler nights. Quite a bit of moisture as well, getting a lot more rain this time of year. Now, what we really want to do with these, as it is not one that can be stored outside really, or there have been very, very limited cases of people getting these through in the ground, really what you're going to need to do to these to give it the best chance of survival is going to be to overwinter these. Now, there's a few different methods. Now, with a banana of this size here, you're going to see quite a large base as we come in here. I'll just see if I can get in and show you. So that's my hand on the base. It's quite a large base here. You know, something like this, I would be looking to dry store over the winter. Now, what essentially that means is to take off all of the leaves. We're going to then dig it out of the ground and remove all the dirt from the roots and look to keep this somewhere very dry over the winter, dark and cool as well. Now what essentially we're doing here is treating it similar to like a bulb. Now we want to really reduce any moisture on this plant, you know, as it goes into the winter here. Now, something of this size, guys, of course, dry storing is probably your best method with it being quite large. You could try cutting off all but one or two leaves, putting it in a fresh pot of compost, and look to keep it in somewhere like a conservatory or greenhouse over the winter. Now that is one method here. Of course, keeping it very dry. You may only want to water it, say, once during the whole winter. The idea is we're trying to prevent any rot from getting to the base of the core of the plant, which is where it's going to have a grow point here. Now, with this particular one, guys, as you can see, quite a decent sized base. You can see where I've already chopped off some of the leaves here earlier in the season, just to promote growth. Now, with this one here, guys, as mentioned, I will be doing a full dry store, so I won't be putting it into any compost or anything like that. I'll just simply remove it, wash off the roots, tip it upside down, and let as much moisture drain out of that. So leave it for 3 to 4 days, tipped upside down with no leaves on it, and then I will stick it into a pot with no compost and really just let it dry out over the winter here. Now with these guys, you know, don't be fearful. It is going to look a bit tatty when you do this. Typically it will shrink by about 50%. Most of the plant is water inside. So again, what we're trying to do really is prevent any rot from getting into the main sort of trunk or stem here. Now, just taking a look, guys, we do have another smaller one here. Now with this one, it's going to be slightly different to the other one. You can see here, if I get into it, base-wise, it's not very big on that one. So with this one here, I'm going to be doing the method of keeping the top leaf and the roller. Those would be the only leaves left. Putting that into, again, a pot, and then trying to overwinter that, just keeping very, very minimal growth on that one as we go here. Now there's a couple other plants that we can take a look at, but for now what we'll do in this video is really focus on this one, the Ensete Maurelii. So what I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to go ahead and start preparing this for winter. So we're going to chop off all the leaves, get this dug out, and we'll show you what that looks like in a second here. One thing to note, guys, just as you are cutting the leaves back, I would always recommend cutting up on the leaf, getting something very, very sharp, but do not cut too close to the base, because as these kind of dry out, you can see on the very bottom here where it's dried, it will then rot down, and you want to keep that rot minimum away from the base. Okay, so really with these guys, you want to leave a good probably 4 to 6 inches of the leaf stem here, so that when that does rot back, it should hopefully only rot back down to about there. Again, keeping this main trunk you know, away from the rot really. So what we'll do, we'll get these all chopped off and come back to you in a second. Alright guys, so just to show you here before we get off all the leaves, tools I'll be using today is going to be a serrated bread knife. You want to have something that's very clean. Again, we want to prevent any sort of infection or rot onto where we are making cuts. I've also got a standard shovel. Now again, this is just for simply getting out the trunk and plant after it has been sort of cut down. Now one thing guys here on this one is also just the idea of when would you want to start overwintering your bananas or red onset bananas. Really with these guys, you know, at the moment here we've got a couple weeks of mild weather before it's due to get down to the frostier nights. Now I would always suggest getting this in before the first kind of hard frost really. Very minor frosts, you may see some damage to the leaves, which if you go back to our previous video you'll see when we had a frost only a couple weeks ago, did do some damage to the leaves, but you know, has been okay. It does appear though with the recent winds guys that it is getting absolutely battered now and really taking a hit. So when would you think about bringing these in? Really it comes down to kind of local temperatures. Just bear in mind guys, with any sort of plant that you are storing for winter, the least amount of time that you can really keep it out of the ground and dry is better for the plant. So really kind of pushing it back as far as you can before that first frost. Now for myself guys, because I'm dry storing and I will be flipping it upside down to get out as much moisture as possible, I'm going to take advantage of the next couple weeks being quite dry and warmer, just to kind of aid the plant in kind of sealing any of the wounds and things like that before it goes away for the winter. Right, so we're just going to cut the leaves now and show you what that looks like. Alright guys, so we started removing some of these leaves here. Now one thing I would recommend as well is with the leaf material you're cutting off, we're definitely worth saving this to use around the garden. Absolutely great mulch for your garden, put some energy back into the soil for next year. So certainly any of the leaves that you are cutting off, let's save those. We'll chop those down and spread them around the soil, around the base of plants. Again, just adding a little bit more nutrients back into the soil. Just wanted to show you here though guys, as we are cutting, you can just see, if I can get in here, let's get this to focus. You can see the cells in here now. Now this is something to point out here, and part of the reason why we do need to dry store this is if this does take a hard freeze, those cells inside are what will rupture and then cause rot in the plant. So this is part of the reason why, again, we want to do this before it comes to any kind of hard freeze. So you kind of want to prepare ahead, keep an eye on the weather around you. Again, once we're kind of getting down to that daytime temperature of around about sort of you know, around about 10 or lower, nighttime temperatures going below 5, the plant is really not going to be doing anything at that point, and you really want to get it out, give it time to kind of seal itself up and everything before we get to that first hard frost. So perhaps maybe a week before that is due to happen. Just gives you a lot of time and easier to fit into your schedule as well, rather than rushing out the night before trying to get all this done before a hard frost. Another thing guys, just to bear in mind with these as well, you know, it's unlike your Musa Bastu bananas, which send up pups from the base and things like that. These mainly are grown by division of this main corm down here, which again is another method to produce more plants. Now as I really only have one large one, I won't be looking to chop this down and divide the corm to make more plants. Gonna see how big I can get this one before it's necessary to do that, i.e. I'm just unable to dry store it when it gets too big. Now as mentioned guys, with the temperature wise, really these don't like to be anything below kind of the 8 to 10 daytime temperature consistently. And of course, if you're getting consistently low nights where it's perhaps getting down to light frosts, again, this may be the time to start thinking about getting these in. Now, one thing to point out here, guys, with these sorts of plants, because we dry store it, it does mean that the type of locations you can grow this type of banana, it makes it a lot more widespread, as essentially, as long as we're taking it out before the first hard frost in your area, you know, really, you could plant it pretty much anywhere, as you're going to be bringing it inside for the winter anyway. Now, the other thing, guys, with these, let's say, for example, storage wise, now this will be stored in a dark cupboard over the winter, cool and dark. Now, of course, we want to keep moisture out. Moisture is our kind of enemy in this when we do this here, guys. So really, when it comes to dry storing, you want as much moisture out of the plant as possible. Now, if we just take a look into here, guys, you can actually see water down in the trunk bases. Now again, we want all of that out, as that is going to you know, really push rot forward if we don't. So again, these are the type of things to think about. Now, let's say, for example, guys, you've got a cool conservatory or perhaps an unheated greenhouse. Now, of course, as long as it remains frost-free, it should allow the plant to kind of slowly tick over. Now, if you are trying to grow it as a house plant or just keep 1 to 2 leaves on, really, we're probably going to water it maybe once during the winter. You want to keep that compost as dry as possible, and then when it comes into your kind of March, May, April, May time next year, you want to start being able to slowly introduce water, add some perhaps dry compost if you haven't already got it in there, and really start to encourage the plant to grow again. Now, what I typically do with these guys when it comes to the beginning of the year is I will bring it out for a couple hours during the daytime when it's milder weather, just to kind of harden off the plant for the spring. And now, of course, if you don't really choose to do this, it may just mean the first few leaves that come out get burned by the UV and things like that, as it would be unused to that after being dry stored for such a long period of time. So a lot of this is just things to think about and consider when you are looking to overwinter these. Now what we'll do is just continue getting the rest of the leaf off and get the plant out, and give you an idea of what that looks like as well. Alright guys, so that's it all cut back. Now it might seem like quite a brutal process doing this here, but this has sort of been proven as one of the better ways to really get your bananas through. Now of course, the various different methods you may find online. Me personally, guys, I've had good luck with this, as this is one I stick with here in the meantime. But again, there are a few different methods, so it is always worth kind of checking out what's best for you, the size of plant you have, and of course your ability to store it over the winter. Alright guys, so when you are actually digging out the corm, what you want to do is give about 1 inch or 2 around the base. The thing we don't want to do, guys, is damage this stem at all. If we do bruise it or damage it, that can again cause rot. So something we want to avoid. I would always leave about 2 inches around the base while you're digging it out. Of course, we're going to be cleaning this off anyway, removing most of the roots as well. So once we get this out, we're going to get everything rinsed off, all the dirt rinsed off. Again, we don't want anything that's going to hold moisture on this plant here. Alright guys, next you want to get your shovel down underneath and slowly start to lever this out. Okay, again, we don't want to be too forceful with it that we damage the corm. But as we kind of push that up, you can just hear it there. That's it. Right, so now we've got that out sideways. What we're going to do is pull this out, look to get off all the dirt off the base, and again, look to drain as much of the water out as we can. Of course, I'm going to be doing this process over a few days, as it's a bit of a larger plant. But bear in mind, guys, most of this plant is made up of water. So again, water's our enemy at this time. We really want to ensure that it's dry as possible before we go ahead and pop that in the cupboard for the year. Now, all the leaf litter here, guys, as mentioned, I'm going to be chopping up and adding around. I will backfill the hole where this comes out of with a lot of leaf litter as well, cover that with some fresh soil. Again, just kind of getting the ground ready and prepped for next year. Alright guys, so as we are cleaning off this base, you do want to be a little bit careful, because in the middle here underneath, that's where your corm's going to be. That's the part we're trying to protect. That's your growth point here, okay? So with this one, guys, as you can see, I'm just kind of teasing out as much of the dirt as I can. Don't need to be hugely worrisome of some of these longer roots here at the bottom. Those, again, we can trim back before we place in a pot. Now what I am doing again is just kind of lightly going through. Again, you want to be slightly careful. We're not going to damage the stem as we do this here, but definitely try and get as much dirt off as possible. Then what we'll do is take the hose, rinse off as much as we can here before setting it out to dry, okay? So this is the kind of way that you want to do this. Again, really just to ensure, once again, we're getting as much moisture out, giving the plant the best chance to survive for the winter here. Alright guys, so just to show you here, it may seem a bit counterintuitive to use water to rinse it off while we are looking to dry store it. But what we're doing essentially, as you can see here, using a bit of a higher pressure just to really get some of that root and dirt off as we go. So as I say, guys, what we're going to do is do this all around the base and make sure we get as much of that dirt and soil off of here as possible. Again, the soil is what's going to be holding the moisture. Right guys, just show you on this one here, essentially we've got as much of the dirt off as really possible on this one. And of course, as it dries out, you'll get a little bit more off as it goes. But right now we're going to be leaving it upside down for roughly 4 to 5 days, just to drain out as much of that excess water as we can. All of the new cuts will be draining water out, as well as getting any of the residual water out from the roots and base here. Now, of course, once this is dry, we'll be flipping it right side up, sticking it into a pot with no soil, using the roots just to prop up the plant over winter. This is going to be stored again in a dark cupboard, probably kept around about the kind of 10 degrees C, and of course this is in a drier cupboard of the house, so to reduce moisture. This is where it was stored last year, and it did fairly well in that. As mentioned, it will shrink, it will get very you know, you're going to get a lot of die off on a lot of the leaf petioles here, but of course, as long as that kind of centralized trunk bit stays dry, it should theoretically make it through the winter. Now, of course, guys, a lot of this is trial and error, so you just need to bear that in mind when you are doing these here. But with that said, if this was helpful, certainly drop a like on the video. Of course, if you're not subscribed yet, certainly drop a subscribe to follow along, and we'll see you on the next one.